Hey, this is Jason Netherton. You're listening to Metal Wani. Cheers.
How are we doing, Jason?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. How's the day going on?
Yeah, I'm just catching up with things. We're getting ready to go to Europe tomorrow, so I have a lot of logistics to take care of, emails to print,
That's awesome. Now, let me congratulate you first. New album, The Killing God, is one of the finest metal albums of this year for sure. So, what kind of feedbacks have you got from your friends and fans?
It's been good, mostly good. It's a little bit of a different direction for us, so there are some people who we're expecting some more straight up grind and sort of our traditional punk edge to it, I guess. But I guess this album we've gone a little more straight ahead death metal with some thrashy and even melodic overtones. So some people are caught off guard at first, but I think they come around after. It's like something you have to listen to a little bit to understand, I guess. So
right, I agree with that, because the incorporation of melody in the songs is probably something different which you guys have tried this time, maybe due to the reason that you have a new guitarist, Darin, who has joined.
Exactly. He's brought a lot to the table, as far as he's probably the most advanced musically among us, and to have someone like him come in and really have that extra voice when we songwrite to sort of help give it more of a tighter sort of and musical, like things are definitely more musical, I guess, in the sense that structures and notes and things are a little bit more proper, I guess, in the traditional sense.
It's dynamic. It has that fresh feeling when you listen, when you tune into the album and conclude. It leaves that, a breath of fresh air when you hear the melodies mixed with your riffs. I mean, your signature riffs are always known to annihilate. So when you add the twist of melody, it just makes it better. Don't you think so?
Yeah, we agree, and we've maybe hinted at that in a few songs in the past. And even if you listen to the album as a whole, it doesn't dominate the album. It's just more here and there, I guess. But definitely in his solos are a little bit more classically based, so maybe that gives the impression as well.
That's wonderful. And what about the recording process for this? What steps did you guys take this time, compared to your previous albums?
Well, if anything, it's the time we took. We kind of took off in 2011 and didn't really tour much the last few years. So we just sort of took our time writing it, which is something we haven't done before.
Okay.
Before, we were more on this sort of like tour record cycle every year and a half, 2 years. And this time we just decided to step back and write an album we really wanted to be happy with. And previous albums were recorded all at once over a month, but this album we recorded in pieces over like 4 months, I guess. So it's a little bit more laid back, and before we proceeded with things, we wanted to make sure we were happy with them, kind of thing. So
that's awesome. So it took basically this album has come out after a long gap of 4 years. So it looks like this gap between the two albums was basically intentional to make sure you guys grow as musicians and work on the material accordingly.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I mean, it was just good timing because we had other things going on in our life, and we wanted to be a little more part-time, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome.
It worked out.
That's cool. And what about the solos? I mean, you're talking about the solos. While listening to your previous songs, like from the previous albums, I always felt that the solos are not memorable and epic. But then I turned into the Killing Gods, and I listened to the various songs like Gallows Humor or even the title track. These songs and these solos have become memorable. I mean, it's been so many days since I've heard, and that solo is still in my brain. I love that vibe.
Oh, cool. Yeah, again, that's Darin. He's 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 trained, and he grew up during the 1980s heyday of classic metal songwriting and soloing, and he's very influenced by Richie Blackmore and Andy LaRocque and guys like that. So it's a nice contribution for sure. He definitely helped us become a better band.
That's wonderful. Now, you also were signed to Relapse, and then you switched to Season of Mist in 2011. So this is the first album which you have released via Seasons of Mist. So why was this change being done, or was it basically you were looking forward for some new opportunities?
Yeah, record labels are going through a process of reorganization now, and a lot of them have a lot of bands, but they don't have a lot of money to spread around between all the bands. So I don't really think it's that big of a difference to switch labels between sizes like Relapse and Season of Mist. They're pretty much the same size, I think. But they did provide us with a more attractive deal out the gate, so it was something we felt a little more comfortable with trying, a new label, and also our popularity is biggest in Europe, and they're based in France, so we just wanted to try and push that a little bit, I guess.
That's wonderful. Now, you've been in this music scene for a long time. You spent a lot of time with Dying Fetus as well, and now with Misery Index. So what change have you felt in the music industry, from back then and now?
Well, it was, during the 90s, we were playing the Dying Fetus. It was very underground music.
Right.
The culture wasn't ready for it yet. It was really extreme. And throughout the 90s, it was very much an underground thing. It was just all about having fun. We never thought it would do anything.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, around 2000, early 2000s, this kind of music all of a sudden made a rupture and became more and more attractive for bigger labels and other things. So that sort of shift in popularity was kind of a shock. Now you can play death metal and get in the Billboard Top 100 and this other stuff, hear it on commercials. And then the other thing, of course, is the transition to digital culture.
Right.
And that sort of upended the way the underground worked in the early days. And everything's, mediated through online forums and through digital, social media, MP3s, and this sort of thing, which, things are going a lot faster. There's more of everything. It's harder to sort of sift through and find things, but at the same time, it's easier. So. Right.
So is it a boon or a bane or both?
Well, it's, history isn't sort of. It isn't things don't stay the same, so
all right.
Every new generation deals with what they have on their plate accordingly, I guess.
Absolutely agree with that. And what about your box, man? They haven't shrunk over the years. You sound more monstrous on the album.
Yeah, I think with anything with age, you sort of understand what your limitations are and what you're capable of, and what to push and what not to. So. I think my vocals are better than ever, really. Like, I'm more conscious of them, more conscious of enunciating words more clearly and trying to go for, maximum impact on certain ones. And where before I was a little bit more, blind about it. You're just sort of like grunting for the sake of it, I guess. And now I should have learned how to channel that to more effectively, I guess.
That's awesome, because I'm able to hear, I'm basically able to recognize your lyrics as well while listening to the song. So, not an easy achievement for a death metal vocalist. How do you think so?
Yeah, Mark too, he does a lot we pretty much split the vocals on the album, even though we have the same range.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's something you learn that I didn't really focus on in the 90s or early 2000s, was to really make sure, and when you're recording the album, to be punctual with how you say the words and use them to maximum effect.
Well, that's
So
great.
that's
You guys have also worked with Steve Wright and Scott Hull to produce and engineer the album. So, were there any new ideas and new tricks being thrown while you guys were working on the album?
yeah. Well, Adam wanted to record with Scott because that's his bandmate in Pig Destroyer,
Right.
and he really liked the way the last Pig Destroyer drums came out, and he wanted to go back to him to replicate that. So did the drums with Scott, took the drums to the Right Way studio in Baltimore, and everything else was done there. If anything, we were a little bit more careful with things. We tried out a few different options, but for the most part, it wasn't there wasn't a big departure or anything from what we've done before. So
Okay. That's really great. Now let's move on something more recent. You recently wrote probably the greatest book ever on death metal. So how did that happen?
that was it's something that sort of started spontaneously around 2010. We were touring a lot that year, and I had a lot of downtime, and it was an idea that came to me that, for hardcore and punk and other genres, whether it's like jazz in the 60s, there's like these sort of oral histories which were created around them,
Right.
sort of like a history from the perspective of those who created the music and who were a part of it.
Right.
And while I'm a fan of books like Albert Mudrian's Choosing Death and others, I thought that death metal could really use a sort of historical retrospective done in the oral history tradition, in the voices of those who helped create it. So
Right.
I just started recording interviews, over 2 or 3 years, and every time we'd be backstage at a festival, you sort of like go up and chat with some people, and after 2 or 3 years, I had 105 contributions, and I just sort of edited them into sort of categories, and it all came together this year finally.
That's wonderful, because it's pretty uncommon for a metal musician to actually do a project like this, like write a book, that to kind of an oral history on the subject. But I guess you're pretty much only person qualified to do that, because you're also pursuing a PhD, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's correct.
What field is it in?
It's in the general field of media and information studies. So it's sort of like a social sciences perspective on, especially on digital culture, technology, and how all these sort of intersect in policy and political economy.
Wow.
So I'm looking at the sort of like politics and economics of the music industry and sort of building on my experience there and seeing where that takes me.
Wow, that's difficult, because you are taking out time to do all this research and study, and then you have a busy schedule with the band. Wow, what can I say?
Yeah, well, like I said, we've sort of toned down our efforts, and this tour we're doing in Europe is like the second of a handful of weeks we've done this year. So we're really still doing about a month or 2 months out of the year. So
that's awesome. Now, you have a handful of shows coming up in Europe. So what about that? I mean, you guys are planning to go on more like American tour or something like that? Let's say later part of this year or early next year.
That's gonna have to wait till next summer at this point, because we're both going. I have to go back to work in the fall, and the guitarist Mark, he's in graduate school too, and he's going back in the fall. So we're gonna have to pick up on touring next summer, I guess.
That's wonderful. Now, if I have to end the interview by asking you a simple question to define the Killing Gods in just one sentence.
A ferocious slab of death grind, tinged with melody and aggression. I don't know.
You're almost there, let me tell you that.
Yeah, I don't know. something there for everyone, I guess.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much, Jason. You spared your precious time today. You have a tour coming up tomorrow, so I don't know when we are gonna be, see you guys live in India, but I just hope to see you, soon.
Yeah, hopefully next year.
That's gonna be the only way. I have to have patience to see you guys live. So all the best for your upcoming tour. Again, thanks a lot for sparing time. So thanks again.
All right, cheers, brother.